Welcome to Uncanny X-Minutes. I'm producer James.
And I'm Saja.
And we're here to talk about the X-Men movies 10 minutes at a time and discuss the comics that go along with them.
Yeah. Which, for this week, we've got minutes 50 to 60. Should I do a brief rundown of what happened?
Absolutely.
All right. So Mystique sabotages Cerebro. The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants attacks the train station. There's a police standoff with the Brotherhood, and Senator Kelly shows up at the X-Mansion.
A lot of stuff, a lot of action.
Yeah. We don't care about any of that action.
I did at the time.
Yeah.
No, there's some cool stuff in this 10 minutes.
Okay.
Like Magneto pulling every cop's gun from them and aiming it at their heads.
That's true.
Stopping a bullet before it hits the dude's head and then just slowly pushing it in.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. That's fun.
That was fun. That is fun.
That's some we get to see Magneto Magnetoing.
Being ruthless. Yeah. Which is a pretty, that scene is just like, yeah, I'd see him do that in the comic books. No problems, no hesitations.
Absolutely.
Magneto has, almost killed his son, sometimes his son. At the time, he was his son, Quicksilver, because he got in the way of his dreams. So,
Don't get in his way.
Yeah, Magneto's very much a greater good type. So that does occur quite often with him.
But when you're aligned with him, man, you do be right next to him.
Yeah. So, he's got super strong loyalty. Like some of the earliest comics, like when Magneto's introduced in like the original run of the X-Men, he's like actually a lot of times getting in the way between Mastermind trying to like hit up Scarlet Witch the whole time and like threatening her. And he like gets like really angry and defensive. It's interesting. She's not his daughter at that point, but later she is. So
that's a bonkers thing. If you don't know, Magneto was not the father of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch.
Right.
Then they retconned it, so he was. Mm-hmm. And then I believe they've retconned it again, so he's not. But
yes.
But so much time has passed, he's acted like their father for so long that they still kind of see him as their father.
Yes, and that is even in the newest issues in the Krakoan era trial of Magneto. It is a lot to do with Scarlet Witch.
Not
and his
baby trial of Magneto.
No, the modern one.
The Who Killed Scarlet Witch trial of Magneto.
Yeah, and he's very defensive of Scarlet Witch, and it's very clear he sees her as a daughter. Whether or not like the retcons or whatever say, for all intents and purposes.
That's how they word it too.
Yeah.
Is that like, even though he's not my father, he's my father.
He's my father. Yeah. And I think it's actually like it's really charming. I think Magneto really shines in the Krakoan era. And when everybody's gray, you would think he would get lost because being gray is such a thing. But no, he's such a standout. Like it's still so good.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that stands out for me in this 10 minutes is him picking up Wolverine and just bending his claws just a little bit, just enough that that's got to hurt.
Yeah, it's kind of the Wolverine's biggest issue, right? Is like when your primary villain is a magnet man.
Your number one nemesis, is Mr. Magnet.
And let's be clear, I checked. Magneto does not need your metal to be magnetic. Like it's just
really?
He does not.
Okay.
There's actually,
which is funny because they do refer to him as the master of magnetism over and over and over again. So he's more of a controller of metal.
Yeah, he's almost like a metal bender. I have something
metal bender.
Yes.
Amazing.
I have something that I want to pitch. I wanted to talk about this when we talk about psychic attacks. But there is a line in the comics where Quicksilver says that Magneto controlled the iron in his and Scarlet Witch's blood in order to control their thoughts so they would serve under him in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Wow.
Yeah. So
wow. I was reading Fatal Attraction's storyline, and there's two characters named Skids and Rusty.
Yes.
And they were being mind controlled by someone. I forget who, because it happened before the story I was reading.
I think it's Masterminds. Is it?
I don't remember.
I don't know.
It doesn't really matter. But he fixes their brains in a similar described way. Mm-hmm. And then they start following because they're like, well, he healed us. So.
Yeah.
Let's go, Captain.
That sentence is in the same storyline. It's in Fatal Attractions. It's actually in the issue, which we're about to get to, which is when Magneto pulls out all of the adamantium inside of Wolverine.
Baller move. I mean, this, like you were starting to say, like, this is the funniest thing about having your biggest nemesis controls metal. Your hardest hitter is literally, well, you have two. You got Colossus, who's made of metal, and you have Wolverine, who's laced with the stuff.
Yeah.
How do you can't?
Well, unfortunately for the X-Men at this period of time, Colossus is actually with Magneto during
Fatal Attractions.
Yeah. He is on Asteroid M. That's like
Avalon is what they're calling
it. Avalon,
yeah.
Or do they call it?
No, this is Avalon because it's all technology. I don't think it. Okay. Asteroid M which was his floating asteroid base. Falls in a previous storyline, and they think he's died.
Okay. I think I
and then Avalon is Fatal Attraction with all the acolytes.
With the acolytes.
Which is his newest group of, like, followers that is more zealot.
Yes. Yeah,
they feel more religious based.
Yeah. That was actually a storyline they did in the animated series, which was excellent. Actually, it was very accurate. Yeah. So they did Fatal Attractions basically. But the point is that Magneto and Wolverine, he literally calls him his nemesis in Fatal Attractions, and Wolverine has to just continue to fight this guy that can control him with Magnet. What I found to be really funny is that the X-Men are infiltrating Avalon to attack Magneto and then act surprised when he pulls out all the adamantium in Wolverine. And I'm like, that's actually...
What do you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Actually, earlier in that storyline, he pulls out most of the machinery out of Cable, who is basically a cyborg.
Yes. Yeah.
So he's out of the story because he's so badly injured because all the metal got ripped out of him.
Yeah.
So what? Oh, let's throw a metal guy at him.
I'm going to assume that most of our listeners know who Cable is. I can't really explain it.
Deadpool 2.
Yeah.
Time traveling.
Yeah.
Cyborg, essentially.
Yeah. We can talk about his birth when we get to Deadpool 2.
When we get to Deadpool 2, we'll do on a deep dive. Short story, it's Cyclops' son from another time. It's a whole thing. Let's not get into a Summers family tree. That could be an entire episode itself.
If not more than one.
Well, supersized 2-hour expanded. No, let's not stop there. So anyway, Magneto strips all of the adamantium out of Wolverine at this point, and we find out that Wolverine's claws were bone to begin with.
Yes, this is the Bone Claw retcon. It's in Wolverine 75, so it's actually really interesting because, like, there's a lot of psychic stuff going on with that too, and I'll deep dive into it when we talk about psychic attacks. He is kind of with Jubilee, and they're sitting under a tree, and he's in recovery from this, like, horrifying experience of getting his adamantium ripped out.
It was a horrifying experience to put it in.
Right. And
now it's been the same to take it out.
Almost as bad to take it out. And so, he's telling Jubilee, and he's, like, releasing his claws. And they actually use a line from earlier in the movie when he talks about, like, when she says, does it hurt? Like, he does, every time, because it does hurt for him to set out his bone claws too. And he keeps it, he says he keeps, taking them out like an earring. Like, like your ears pierced, but it's still painful. He tells Jubilee, I don't remember this. I thought this was implanted in me. I was born with these. Like, he's discovering it for the first time. Mm-hmm. I have opinions about bone claws.
Yeah. Oh, you don't like the bone claws?
I don't like the bone claws.
I personally, it's tough because I'm more of a more modern reader, and I read Origins when it was coming out, and I was like, yeah, he's got bone claws, of course. Like,
yeah.
One of the first cover images is the bone claws, like, in his hand. It makes more sense for me, from a biological standpoint, that they would just be part of him. Like, the logistics of creating bone claw or metal claws for someone and putting it retractable in their hands, it would have to be more. Not that it's out of the ordinary for the X-Men to do something like this. It feels more like a cybernetic enhancement, less than like what they did, which is just slap some metal on them.
I get what you're saying. I think that, like, there's so much weird tech in X-Men that to be, like, so hand wavy, like, it doesn't really matter if the claws retract or not.
I guess I can see the argument that it's just one more power he has, like one more part of his mutant ability. And most people have a couple of things, but he has, regeneration and enhanced senses and bone claws.
Yes. That's why I think that it's too much. I like the tension between his actual mutant abilities, which is basically just like kind of defensive, right? Like heightened senses and being able to heal himself, right? Like he's just kind of keeping himself safe, but then also because of the situation where they gets put the adamantium in him, he becomes like a more violent or like you said, heavy hitter on the X-Men. He's the brawn. I like the tension between like his mutant abilities and like what he has become via people.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. Like I think that tension is interesting, but I don't think it's been, maybe something I haven't read, but I don't think it has been quite explored. I think the opposite has been explored, where like they kind of turn him into like the beastly Wolverine. Yeah. Which again, I never find that to be particularly interesting. Like I think the other way is more interesting to me. But I've been outvoted already, so I can't affect this.
Well, and it's funny because when you have a more bestial beast on the team as well. Like not just Hank McCoy that can hang from his feet. Yeah. A more beastie beast. Mm-hmm. It's tough that they both sort of occupy that similar space.
Yeah. They've pulled back on that for Wolverine, like him in the forest or whatever, for that like a little bit of a run. It kind of fades out into like people don't really remember that.
Yeah, I don't know that.
There's a whole set of issues where he literally turns into like an animal, and he like lives in the forest outside of the school. Like okay. I'm serious.
Okay.
It's a very weird run. Anyway, I think that this Magneto with the adamantium, I'm glad they included it because it's absolutely vital to understand like also the bravery of Wolverine to be consistently fighting against Magneto when he's at such a disadvantage, which most of the time he's not at a disadvantage in a fight. But with Magneto, he absolutely is.
This set of minis also gives us an iconic line that is used in the comics over and over again. And that is when talking about mutants and humans, they always say that they're living like in a society that hates and fears you. Mm-hmm. And hate and fear specifically, it can be in any, they use it in all sorts of different ways, but the term specifically of hate and fear is always there. And it's great. It does its job for any, because like the mutant metaphor, whoever you want to put it on, hate and fear is going to belong with it.
Would you like to hear something very interesting?
Always?
That was not originally part of the first run of X-Men.
Really?
That is a Claremont invention.
I'm not surprised by that.
No, me either. Big Claremont fan over here.
Yeah, no, Claremont. If it weren't for Claremont, we wouldn't have the X-Men we have now.
That's 100% true. If you go back and I actually thought this would be easier to find because I just like typed it in and I bet you somebody already has the issue. Yeah. I actually couldn't find anybody.
You had to do your own digging.
I had to start from the beginning. And I started from the beginning, and I had read this article that I thought was really interesting that was talking about how when Stan Lee was creating the X-Men, it was actually what you had mentioned, where he was saying that like he just didn't want to come up with like backstories for them. Yeah. And so in the earliest issues, he said that there were people cheering the X-Men on and they're working with the military. And I went back and read the first like run, and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, they just like call up the FBI. Like occasionally, and they're like, oh yes, we'll come meet you down there. It's like very like Avengers-y, which makes sense. Like the Fantastic Four, that kind of stuff that was going on at the same time. It's not until Claremont picks up after X-Men gets canceled and then the new series, but it's a continuation that you start to pick it up. In issue 94, when Cyclops calls the military, which is something they had been doing for like 70 issues in the past before, he gets called a mutie and that they don't trust him.
Ooh, they dropped the M word. They dropped
that first. Ooh. And then 2 issues later in 96, that's when at the top panel, at the kind of the intro, it says a world that hates and fears them. In all of the other issues with Stan Lee, they were like the strangest teenagers or like the most unusual
team. That's why it's uncanny.
Right. Yeah. They were just kind of like weird. They were kind of like weird powered.
They're quirky.
But yes, that was the vibe. And then you get to 94 when Claremont picks up. Basically, it's right at the beginning. Yeah. Because he's continuing the numbering. So that's not like 96 issues of Claremont. That's like 2 issues of Claremont, and he puts it at the top, and that's when you see it. And I checked because I was really curious when this might have come in, and that was the first time. And you could see that in the first issue of Claremont, when he's talking to the military, he clearly already had the plan that this was the direction they were going to go, that the X-Men were not going to be cheered like the Fantastic Four. They kind of drop these little nuggets before he pulls out that panel. It's fascinating. I thought that was really, I want to give Claremont a lot of credit for that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the backbone of the mutant story.
Yes.
Is not always being regarded as normal.
Or heroes.
Or would you say 90 some issues?
Technically.
So I'm saying for 90 some issues, you have other mutants causing destruction. That is going to wear down the public mind about what they think about mutants when it's like, oh, I get the X-Men are working with the military, but like, look at all these guys that are destroying things.
Yeah. Yeah. And when he calls and it gets called a mutie, they were saying to him on the phone, he's like, because they were chasing after, is it the Vanisher? I'm pretty sure it is the
Probably.
Vanisher.
He's in early
and
stuff.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, I knew with this thing with the Vanisher, it'd be you guys involved. So like you do also see like the characters in the Marvel universe drawing conclusions from when bad stuff is happening. Of course, it's a mutant issue,
right?
Like it's A+. I do want to also say there's not actually 94 issues. A lot of those issues are reprints of older issues because I think X-Men gets canceled in like 70 issues or something around there. I don't know exactly the number. And then there's a bunch of reprints, but they're numbered like new issues. So you can, if you opened up 85, it would be it's actually an older issue. They just renumbered it. It's a little confusing.
That's an older time where they didn't expect everyone to have every issue.
Right, or access
to it. It's like running reruns, essentially.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah. So
now, was that the one? I know they did at some point new stories in the back of reprints.
Ooh, that's a good question.
Is it during that run or is it a different
I think that's got to be it. I think there's got to be some. I will look and check that.
Look into that.
Yeah, I'll look into those. Because when I see the reprints, I just skip those because I'm like, well, those are the other issues.
Right.
That's a good point. That's actually, I think, kind of the downside of like the content now, right? When I see the cover and the cover's like the same, it's like, oh, I see the title of this issue and I know I've read that one already. I'm not going to read it again. I'm not going to open it up.
Why would you?
Right. But I think you're right. I think there might be some stories back there.
I'd heard a thing.
Ooh, spicy. One other thing about hates and fears them is it's not always hate and fear.
Okay.
In the 90s, not in every comic book, but in some of them. So for example, X-Men number 25. This is just X-Men, not Uncanny.
Not Uncanny. Adjectiveless X-Men?
Adjectiveless X-Men. They say fears and shuns them.
Okay.
I don't think it's as good.
No. Shuns feels like you just go over there.
Right. It just doesn't feel...
Hate and fear is much more what I feel like happens.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was reading a post, I think it was even today, where someone's like, why do in all the big events do they just try killing all the X-Men? Like that just seems to be the well they go to over and over again. And it's like, because of this, because hates and fears.
Yeah.
And unless you can, like the mutant registration, unless you can control them, I mean, they're an aberration to some people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, look into history. Yeah. That's it.
It's not subtle that they are pulling in literally Magneto will say in issues after issue after issues and like drawing parallels to like the hatred that they experienced in America to like the fascist rule in Germany. Like he literally says that
constantly
all the time.
You can't get him to stop.
It's not subtle. It's not like underneath the surface for readers to read into. No, it's literally in the black and white. And that's his point. It's like the fear of replacement, which like sometimes you still see in like media today, people kind of stoking these fears of like the mutants will replace us all and what will happen to regular old humans? Like we have a right to live too, like that kind of propaganda, which has its basis in fascism. The writers were not this was intentional. They're not messing around.
Yes,
They're
exactly.
serious. Yeah. Hates and Fears, I think, is iconic. And I think that, like, man, I would love to recommend people to every single person to read Claremont's run, but I cannot do that. Not in good conscience.
No, we'll give you ones to read here.
Yeah, but like for me, I think if a lot of the basis of the stuff that makes the X-Men popular in the 90s, though, do come from the Claremont runs.
Yeah.
So what else happens? Mystique and the Cerebro implanting.
Yeah.
The poisoning of Cerebro.
Yeah, the liquid-based Cerebro technology.
Interesting.
Which I've never seen, never thought of it as a liquid-based technology.
Nope.
Sure. She injects some squid ink into it or something. The attack doesn't happen, I think, until the next 10 minutes.
Yes.
But the sabotage starts here.
Yes.
And it is interesting because if you look at a lot of big event comics, like the big event X-Men books, if you are going to attack the X-Men, one of the first things you need to do is take out their intel. Either take out Cerebro some way or another, or a big psychic attack to take out, whatever myriad of psychics they might have.
Yeah. When one of the first things they do during an event called Operation Zero Tolerance, we don't need to go into the details. You pretty much got it from the title of it. One of the first things that happens is Bastion takes Cerebro away from the X-Men. He confiscates it and is using it for his own nefarious purposes in the background. But effectively is like, we need to be able to remove their ability to like find each other or find other mutants.
Yeah.
And Bastion wants to use it maliciously to hunt down mutants. But Cerebro is also an enhancement as well of like psychic energies. Like you can see where all people are. Like it's honestly,
I mean, that comes more into effect in the second movie.
Yeah.
That you know where all the people are and where all the mutants are.
Yeah, that's true. Cerebro sabotage, it took me a little bit to dig into because I don't really remember any of that happening, like the sabotage with
specifically Cerebro.
With Cerebro. But after looking online, I realized I did read one, which is when the White Queen, who is Emma Frost, she bugs Cerebro to kind of so she can get intel on like where mutants are and stuff like
Brilliant.
that. It's not exactly the same thing as what
It still
Mystique is
works.
doing here, but it's really similar.
I do know in Second Coming, when we're bringing back Cable again.
Cable's great.
He comes back into the present time with the Mutant Messiah. More on that probably later. But he knows of a way of blocking Cerebro's signal. That one I feel like happens more often.
Yes.
As people find out a way to
Hide
mask themselves.
Yeah.
So the X-Men are a little blind due to that. And I think there even may have been like I think there may have been a surge of some sort that takes out Cerebro in that one as well. I should have reread that one.
That's fair. That's fine. I believe you.
But they are kind of running blind at some point.
With that. Professor X has also poisoned Cerebro.
Himself?
As a security measure for other people using Cerebro.
You got to like hit this button before you turn it on. Otherwise, yeah.
But it's not so much as like a physical liquid like Mystique has. It's more of like a tech virus. This is the era of the techno-organic virus, the legacy viruses of X-Men. There's a lot of tech stuff going on in X-Men during this period of time. But Professor X
the 90s?
himself,
There's
the
a lot
90s.
of tech stuff in the 90s.
A lot of crazy tech stuff in the 90s. And
don't forget about the Shi'ar technology.
well, that's how Cerebro is functioning.
Yeah.
Because Cerebro gets advanced because they use Shi'ar technology,
Which
Professor
we've
X's girlfriend.
described before, but it's an alien race that look like bird people.
Yeah. They're not real. I mean, they don't have like bird heads.
No,
but
they have
like,
feathers.
Yeah, and like
That's really what it is. It's people with some ornamental feathers instead of hair.
Yeah, and their
Is
hair
how I
kind of
would
like
describe
sticks
it.
out. Yeah. But
But they're like a ruling empire in space.
Yeah.
They're one of the ruling empires of space. When
major
you watch like MCU stuff, you have Kree, you have Skrull, and then you have Shi'ar.
Yes, I guess that's true. If you're in the MCU, if you've been following that along and you've been introduced to the other two, it's actually a travesty you haven't been introduced to the Shi'ar. They should be there with the rest of them.
Well,
yeah.
they're hanging out on their own. They're hanging out over here with the X-Men.
They're in the segregated Marvel universe where they're with the X-Men only.
Wait, are you saying that the X-Men movie universe is separate but equal?
That's what they're telling me.
Fox is that's what Marvel's doing.
Yes, I really like the Shi'ar. We don't have to go into deep, but like I actually am a big fan.
But if you're reading 90s, often like the 90s era, things get laced with Shi'ar. They just get molded with Shi'ar technology.
Yeah, it's kind of like the nanoparticles in, I think that's Iron Man, and then what is the unstable molecules in Fantastic Four?
Yeah.
In X-Men, it's Shi'ar technology. It's like, space things that we've figured out that are better than normal clothing or whatever, things like that.
It's so we can do fantastical things and not have to explain it. It's Shi'ar technology.
Exactly. It's like, how do you nobody knows about Shi'ar technology. You don't, as the reader, so you just have to buy it. I accept. Hey, sometimes the best things happen when you just don't want to be bothered writing storylines. Yeah, it's aliens.
That's it. But I do like the idea of you got to take out Professor X. Let's be honest. But in this group, this team, he is 100% the leader.
One of the first X-Men battles was finished by Professor X just zapping them. The Blob actually gets mind wiped by Professor X. I think that's issue like 5 or 6, really early on. But in X-Men #2, Vanisher is defeated by Professor X's mind. Like they have the whole team jumping around trying to fight or whatever, and then Professor X just like comes in at the last minute and he's like, "Zap, never mind, I've solved the problem."
That is apparent right there. It's like, well, I let you try.
They needed to learn.
Right.
I actually think the line that he says it is like they're giving it, but they're doing a good job, but they just don't have it yet. Like, and so he goes in and finishes the job for them.
I'm glad that wasn't in this movie.
Yeah, they're much older, I think.
No, they
in
are,
the movies. So I think like they're teaching. So it seems like the starting point here is a little bit later than a lot of than the early
I'm just
comics.
saying, I'm glad that we don't go 100% from the comic source material. There is room to adapt.
Oh yeah, we don't need to. You don't need to read those. It's fine. Like they're just. I think that the retcon around the Wolverine, the X-Men era, where they do like the original 5, if you really wanted to like think about the original 5, just read those instead.
So what you're saying is that it's the storyline where Beast, current day Beast, goes back in time and grabs the original 5 X-Men from the Silver Age as teenagers and brings them to the current day to show Cyclops to not be a terrorist.
Yes, except he finds a way to time travel that does not create split timelines, which has always been kind of the MO within X-Men, but this is like a special kind of time travel. And so, spoiler alert for this, but he picks them up and he puts them back and they don't have any memory of it. And it's like, it happens within a second. So, it closes the loop in that way.
I do like in those stories, though, that they're like, well, we can't go back. Professor X will mind wipe us.
Yeah.
If he knows we've been to the future,
yeah,
he will 100% mind wipe us. It's like, yes, he will.
Yeah, he will. No hesitation. He does it all the time. Did it in issue 2, did it in issue 4.
You just said he did it. And that was just to fight a guy.
Yeah.
To preserve the timeline? Get out of here.
Yeah. No, absolutely. He just didn't want to be bothered with the Vanisher or the Blob anymore. That's it. That's all it took.
All right, we're done with this fight. Get out of here. Don't forget your shoes. And that's minutes 50 through 60, bringing us up to the 1 hour mark of this movie.
Halfway. A little bit more?
More?
Yeah.
Yeah,
before movies were 3 hours.
We have 5 episodes left.
Okay.
So we're on the back half now.
I'm ready.
All right. Well, I've been producer James.
And I'm Sasha.
And we'll see you in the next 10.